There is a finger, thin, scarred at the knuckle, trembling slightly not from fear, but from the bone-deep cold of a stone room in the dead of night. And it is carving something into the underside of a solid gold plate. Not a message anyone was meant to find. Not a prayer to the gods of the empire. Something older than both. A code. The palace surrounding this tiny, silent act is the greatest empire the ancient world has ever produced. Armies without number. Walls 100 feet high and wide enough for chariots to race across the top. Hanging gardens that made foreign ambassadors weep in pure, overwhelmed terror the first time they saw them.
It is done.
And yet, inside that palace, deep inside the belly of the beast, where the air smells of myrrh and burning meat, 4 young men from a conquered, broken city are doing something the empire never accounted for. They are winning. Not with swords. They have no weapons. Not with armies. Their army is dead. Not with gold or political alliance. They are winning with silence. With discipline. With a kind of internal architecture so precise, so deliberate, that an entire superpower would spend 70 years trying to break it and completely, spectacularly fail. This is the Book of Daniel. Not the children's version. Not the pastel-colored flannel board story with the friendly, yawning lions and the smiling king. The real one.
I must know.
The one the powerful have always wanted to reduce to a fairy tale. The one that contains a literal countdown. And tonight we are going to read every single number, including the one that named the exact night Babylon died. Long before it happened. Before we go inside the palace, before we look at the furnace and the blood on the walls, we need to understand why this specific story makes certain people deeply uncomfortable. The Book of Daniel is one of the most disputed, debated, and nervously handled texts in all of ancient scripture. Not because scholars doubt it exists. They don't. We have the fragments from the Dead Sea Scrolls. We have the historical footprint. They dispute it because of what it claims to do. It claims to predict the sequence of world empires: Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, with a specificity so terrifyingly precise that historians in the 18th and 19th centuries simply refused to believe it was written when it said it was. They read the descriptions of the Grecian Empire splitting into 4. They read the descriptions of the Roman war machine crushing the earth with iron teeth. And they argued it must have been written after the fact. A forgery. A piece of historical fiction dressed up as prophecy. Because the alternative was more unsettling. The alternative was that someone, in the 6th century BCE, sitting inside a foreign palace as a prisoner of war, actually saw something tear through the fabric of time. That is the thing the gatekeepers of historical consensus have always struggled with. A story this precise cannot be an accident. And a story this politically charged cannot be allowed to remain in its full, unfiltered form. So what happened to it? Portions of the Book of Daniel, specifically the extended apocalyptic visions in chapters 7 through 12, were treated for centuries as too dangerous to preach in public, too destabilizing for the masses, too easy to weaponize by anyone who decided their particular emperor, their particular king, was the beast rising from the sea. Rome did not want its citizens reading about fallen kingdoms being crushed to dust. Medieval kings did not want their subjects meditating on the handwriting on the wall that told a monarch his time was up. So those chapters were quietly shelved, spiritualized, turned into safe, distance metaphors. The lion's den became a bedtime story for children to learn about being brave in the dark. The fiery furnace became a Sunday school illustration about trusting your friends. And the terrifying visions, the statue with feet of clay, the 4 mutated beasts, the 70 weeks, the Ancient of Days seated on a throne of literal fire, those became academic footnotes, relics, curiosities, things for scholars to argue about in dusty journals that no one reads. But here's what they never tell you. Every single system of power that has read this text carefully, every empire, every dynasty, every ideological regime has had the exact same reaction. Not dismissal, not mockery, fear. There is a reason Nebuchadnezzar, the most violent warlord of his era, kept Daniel alive for decades and bowed his face to the dirt before him.
But wait.
There is a reason Darius the Mede threw Daniel into the den and then spent the entire night awake, fasting, pacing the stone floors, unable to sleep. There is a reason Belshazzar's face went the color of ash when he saw the words appear on the wall. They understood something that our sanitized, domesticated Sunday school version forgot. This is not a comfort story. This is a resistance manual. Now we go inside. Jerusalem, 605 BCE. The city has just fallen. Not in a day. Empires rarely take cities in a single day. It fell slowly, agonizingly, the way all things fall. First the outlying walls, then the supply lines, then the bread, then the water, and finally, the will. Nebuchadnezzar's army did not need to destroy Jerusalem completely. Not yet. That total annihilation would come later. For now, the king of Babylon had a much more sophisticated strategy. He wanted the best. Specifically, he wanted the best young minds from every conquered nation. The most intelligent, the most physically impressive, the most promising aristocrats. He wanted them brought to Babylon, educated in the Babylonian language, trained in Babylonian sciences, fed Babylonian food, given Babylonian names, and then deployed back into their own people as instruments of the empire. It was not genocide. It was something quieter. And in many ways, infinitely more effective. It was a 3-year, systematic conversion program. Daniel was one of 4 selected from the Israelite nobility. His name, in Hebrew, meant God is my judge. It was a statement of ultimate accountability. His new name Belteshazzar meant Bel protect his life. Bel being the chief Babylonian deity. They renamed him after a foreign god. That is not a small thing. In the ancient world, your name was your identity. Your name carried your covenant, your ancestry, your purpose, your soul's trajectory. To strip a man of his name was to strip him of everything he understood himself to be. It was psychological erasure. His 3 companions Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah became Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Each name a reference to Babylonian or Assyrian deities. Each name a small, daily act of spiritual overriding. Every time someone called them, they had to answer to a pagan god. The empire was patient. It understood that you do not need to kill a people to neutralize them. You simply need to make them forget who they are. And the food. This part is often glossed over. Made to seem like a minor dietary preference. A food allergy. A cultural quirk about not eating pork. It was none of those things. The food from the king's table was consecrated. It was ritually offered to Babylonian gods, specifically Marduk, before it was served to the court. The wine was poured out on altars. The meat was sacrificed. To eat it was to participate in a religious act. To accept it was to declare, even silently, even passively, that the gods of Babylon had jurisdiction over you. It was taking the empire into your very body. Daniel understood this with a precision that is almost shocking for a teenager in exile. He said no. Not dramatically. Not with a shouting match in the courtyard. Not with a political manifesto. He made a quiet proposal to the guard. 10 days. Give us 10 days of vegetables and water. Nothing from the king's table. Then compare us to the others who ate the royal meat and drank the royal wine. Judge by the result. If we look weak, do what you must. 10 days. That is all he asked for. And at the end of 10 days, the 4 of them looked healthier, stronger, more vital than every other candidate in the entire program. Stop for a moment. Because this is the part that children's version always skips past too quickly to get to the lions. Daniel did not refuse and then immediately call down fire from heaven to prove a point. He proposed a test. He submitted to accountability. He made his stand inside the system, using the system's own metrics: visible health, cognitive performance, physical fitness, to prove his point. He was not a rebel in the dramatic, cinematic sense of breaking windows and burning banners. He was something far more dangerous. He was a man who understood that the most effective form of resistance is excellence. Unimpeachable, undeniable excellence. The kind that leaves the opposition with absolutely nothing to say. Years pass. Daniel and his companions complete the 3-year program. They endure the propaganda. They pass every examination the Magi throw at them. They are presented to Nebuchadnezzar himself. The king speaks with them personally. And the text says he found no one equal to them in all his court. They were 10 times better than the magicians and enchanters. They are now insiders. They have access. They wear the fine Babylonian robes. They speak the Chaldean language perfectly. They carry the Babylonian names. But they are not Babylonian.
No.
Not even slightly. And then Nebuchadnezzar has a dream. Not just any dream. The kind of dream that wakes a man at 3 in the morning with his heart pounding against his ribs, covered in cold sweat, and no memory of why. He knows it was significant. He knows it contained something terrifying. But the image has dissolved into the shadows, the way all dreams dissolve, leaving only the crushing weight of it behind. He summons every astrologer, magician, and sorcerer in Babylon, the elite minds of the empire. And he makes an extraordinary demand. Not just, interpret my dream. Anyone can make up an interpretation. He says, tell me what I dreamed. And then interpret it. His advisors are horrified. They stammer. They tell the king no one has ever asked this before. No human being can know another man's dream without being told it. This is impossible. This is asking them to perform something that has never been performed in the history of the world. Only the gods can do this, and their dwelling is not with flesh. Nebuchadnezzar's eyes go cold. He says, I know. That is exactly why I'm asking. He is testing them. He wants to know if their power is real or merely a performance of power. A charade they've been running on his payroll. And he decrees that he will execute every single one of them, tear them limb from limb and turn their houses into rubble, if they cannot prove it. The executioners draw their swords. They begin making their rounds through the city. Daniel hears about it. The guards come to his door. He does not panic. He does not run. He asks for time. He goes to his friends, and they pray. They ask the God of heaven for mercy concerning this mystery. And then, astonishingly, Daniel goes to sleep. And in the night he receives it. The full vision. The enormous statue towering over a dark earth. The head of blinding gold Babylon. The chest and arms of silver the next empire, the Medo-Persians. The belly and thighs of bronze the Greeks who would follow. The legs of iron the ruthless Roman war machine. And the feet part iron, part fragile clay. The weakest point. The internal contradiction that every empire eventually reaches when it becomes too heavy to sustain itself. And then, a stone. Not carved by human hands. Cut from a mountain by nothing visible. And it strikes the statue at the feet, the exact place of weakness, and the whole magnificent, terrifying thing collapses. Gold and silver and bronze and iron and clay, all ground to fine dust, blown away by the wind like chaff from a summer threshing floor, leaving nothing. And the stone becomes a mountain that fills the entire earth. The next morning, Daniel stands before Nebuchadnezzar. He tells him everything. The dream. The image. The sequence of empires that will rise and fall. And then he delivers the line that carries the weight of history. You, O king, you are the head of gold. He was not flattering the king. He was telling him, you are temporary. You are the first. You are the greatest right now. But there will be others after you. They will surpass you. And none of them will last. And something is coming that no empire has ever built, a kingdom not made with human hands, and that is the thing that will not be destroyed. Nebuchadnezzar, the ruler of the known world, falls on his face before Daniel. The most powerful man on earth, prostrate before a Hebrew prisoner of war. That is not a small moment. That is the first crack in the Babylonian wall. But Nebuchadnezzar is still Nebuchadnezzar. And kings do not stay on the floor for long. Some years after the dream, the text does not give us a precise date. But enough time has passed for ego to replace all. Nebuchadnezzar builds something. An image of solid gold. 90 feet tall. 9 feet wide. Standing alone on the flat, dusty plain of Dura. 90 feet. To give you a sense of physical scale, the Statue of Liberty, from base to torch, stands 305 feet. 90 feet was the height of a modern 9-story building. A monolith of gold-plated metal reflecting the brutal Mesopotamian sun, rising from a plain where there is absolutely nothing else to interrupt the horizon. It was designed to dominate the landscape, to force you to look at it. And he summons everyone. Every official, every governor, every captain, every judge, every treasurer, every counselor from every single province under Babylonian control. The entire administrative backbone of the empire gathered in one place. Come. Stand before it. When you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music, bow down. Fall to the earth and worship the image of gold. And the penalty for not bowing? The furnace. Already lit. Already burning. Already roaring with a heat so intense it distorted the air around it. The music plays. A deafening wall of sound echoing across the plain. Everyone bows. Thousands upon thousands of people, dropping to the dirt in synchronized obedience. Everyone except 3 men. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. They do not run. They do not hide in the back of the crowd. They stand there, upright, in a massive field of prostrate bodies, utterly, undeniably visible. Someone notices immediately. Of course they do. There are always informers in an empire. There are always people who benefit from betrayal. The astrologers, who had always hated them, bring the accusation to the king. They are dragged before Nebuchadnezzar. He gives them a second chance. A direct, personal offer from the throne. Bow down. Just once. Just the physical act of it. No one even needs to know what you believe privately. Just bend the knee and live. And they give him an answer that should be read slowly, because it is one of the most profound statements of defiance in human history. They say, King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. Let that land. Even if he does not. Even if the rescue never comes. Even if we burn to ash. Our answer remains exactly the same. They are not bargaining. They are not negotiating. They are not asking for a favorable outcome in exchange for their religious compliance. They are simply refusing. And Nebuchadnezzar's face changes. The text says his attitude toward them completely altered. He was full of fury. And he commands the furnace heated 7 times hotter than normal. 7 times. A heat so extreme, so unnecessary, it defies logic. The strongest soldiers in his army bind them. And as those soldiers throw them into the fire, the heat radiating from the door is so violent it kills the guards instantly. The 3 men fall into the flames. And then something happens inside the fire. The king is watching from a safe distance. He watches because he cannot look away. Because you never look away from the exact moment you think you have finally won. He leaps to his feet in amazement. He asks his advisors, "Did we not tie up 3 men and throw them into the fire?" They answer, "Certainly, your majesty." He says, "Look, I see 4 men. Not 3 figures writhing in agony. 4 men. Walking calmly around inside the fire, completely unbound. And the 4th one, he looks like a sign of the gods." He walks closer to the door of the furnace. He calls them out. They walk out. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The satraps, prefects, governors, and royal advisors crowd around them, examining them in stunned silence. Their robes are untouched. Not a single hair on their heads is singed. There is not even a faint smell of smoke on their clothes. The fire did not consume them. It only burned away the ropes that held them. Pay attention to that detail. Because that is the one the text deliberately lingers on. They were bound when they went in. They were completely free when they came out. The thing the empire meant to use to destroy them only succeeded in removing what was holding them back. Decades pass. Nebuchadnezzar dies. The empire shifts. And we arrive at a different king. A different palace. The night that changed the world forever. Belshazzar, grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, is throwing a feast. Not just a feast, a deeply calculated performance of power and contempt. 1,000 of his nobles are gathered in the great hall. He orders the gold and silver cups to be brought out. The specific cups taken from the temple in Jerusalem decades ago. Sacred vessels. Objects consecrated for a specific purpose, in a specific place, before the God of Israel. He fills them with Babylonian wine and passes them to his nobles, his wives, and his concubines. And they drink. And they praise the gods of gold and silver, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone. What he is doing is not random ignorance. He knows exactly what those vessels are. He is making a theological statement. He is saying, "Your God lost. The ultimate proof is in my hand. The proof is that I am using his sacred, holy objects as cheap party cups for my concubines." It is one of the most audacious, arrogant acts of contempt recorded in ancient literature. And the response is immediate. Suddenly, the fingers of a human hand appear. No arm attached to it. No body. Just a pale hand. Writing on the plaster wall of the palace, directly in the light of the lampstand, where absolutely everyone in the room can see it. The music stops. The laughter dies. The text says Belshazzar's face went pale. His thoughts terrified him so much that his limbs gave way, and his knees knocked together. The king, surrounded by his massive army, his elite officials, his wealth, his finest food and wine, is suddenly a terrified, trembling man in a room that has suddenly become entirely too small. On the wall, in letters carved into the plaster by nothing human, are 4 words: Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parson. He screams for the enchanters, astrologers, and diviners. Whoever reads this gets purple robes, a gold chain, and the 3rd highest rank in the kingdom. They all come. And they all fail. No one can read it. No one can interpret it. And then the Queen Mother, the woman who has lived through the reigns of multiple kings, who remembers the old days, she enters the banquet hall. She remembers someone. There is a man in your kingdom who has the spirit of the holy gods in him. In the time of your father, he was found to have insight and intelligence. Bring Daniel. Daniel, now an old man, stands before Belshazzar. The young king repeats the offer: purple robes, gold, power. Daniel looks at him, looks at the terrified nobles, and says, "Keep your gifts for yourself. Give your rewards to someone else. Nevertheless, I will read the writing for the king." And then he reads the wall. Mene numbered. God has numbered the days of your kingdom and brought it to an end. Tekel weighed. You have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Para is divided. Your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. That night, that very same night, Babylon falls. The historians outside the Bible tell us exactly how it happened. Cyrus the Great, king of Persia, realized he could not breach the massive walls. So he diverted the Euphrates River, the river that ran directly beneath the walls of Babylon. The river the city believed made it utterly impregnable. He diverted it upstream into a marsh. And when the water level dropped to mid-thigh, his elite soldiers simply walked under the walls through the muddy riverbed in the dead of night. The city did not even know it had fallen until the Persians were already inside their palace. Belshazzar's feast was likely still going on in the inner rooms when the gates were opened from the inside. The greatest empire in the known world ended by waist-deep water. Darius the Mede takes the city. Belshazzar is killed before morning. Everything Daniel said came true before the sun rose. But here is the secret. The real secret buried deep inside all of this history. The whole time Daniel was in Babylon, the whole time the empire thought it was containing him, managing him, using his intellect for its own gain, Daniel was watching something else entirely. He was watching a clock. In chapter 9, he sits alone reading a scroll from the prophet Jeremiah. And Jeremiah had written decades earlier that the desolation of Jerusalem would last exactly 70 years. Daniel counts the years. He calculates where he is in the timeline. The 70 years are almost up. And he prays. He does not pray asking God to change the timeline. He prays asking to understand it. He repents for his people. He asks to be aligned with what is coming. And then, while he is still speaking, the angel Gabriel comes to him in swift flight at the time of the evening sacrifice. And Gabriel tells him about the 70 weeks. Not 70 years, 70 prophetic weeks. Each week representing 7 years. A hyper-precise countdown of 490 years. With specific, world-altering events attached to specific moments in time. The issuing of the decree to rebuild Jerusalem. The arrival of the Anointed One, the Messiah. The cutting off of the Anointed One, where he would have nothing. The destruction of the city and the sanctuary by the people of the ruler who will come. The desolation. The end. This is the most numerically precise, detailed prophetic sequence in all of ancient scripture. And it was not given to a king on a throne. It was not given to a general leading an army. It was not given to a high priest sitting comfortably in a temple. It was given to a prisoner. To a man in permanent exile. A man who had lost everything externally. Who had no land, no political power, no weapons, no family lineage to pass on. He had only precision, only faithfulness, only the unbreakable discipline of a man who had decided, a very long time ago when he was just a teenager looking at a plate of Babylonian meat, what he was and what he was not, and had never, ever moved from it. Empires thought they were imprisoning Daniel. But Daniel was never imprisoned. He was positioned. And there is a massive difference. Every generation meets its Babylon. It does not always look like an ancient empire. It does not always have walls 100 feet high. It does not always arrive with an army carrying spears and bronze shields. Sometimes, Babylon arrives as a job offer. A promotion. An invitation to a table where the food is very good. The conversation is very stimulating. And the only price of admission is a small one: just adjust what you say you believe. Just soften it slightly. Just frame your convictions in language that makes the people at the table more comfortable. Don't be so rigid. The empire rarely asks you to bow down to a 90-foot golden statue all at once. It starts with a name. What do you want to be called? What title do you seek? What category do you want to fit into? What brand are you building? And then it moves to the food. What do you consume daily? What fills your mind in the small, quiet hours of the night? What voices? What media? What algorithms have more access to your internal world than the voices you would consciously choose? And then, finally, the music. When the signal plays, and the culture always plays a signal, who bows without even noticing? Who goes through the motions of compliance so automatically, so seamlessly, that they no longer even register it as a choice? Daniel's story is not a piece of ancient history. It is a mirror held up to the present. The thing that strikes you, reading the full text carefully without the Sunday school filter, is how utterly ordinary Daniel's resistance actually was in its daily application. He did not stage a dramatic protest. He did not write a scorching manifesto and nail it to the palace door. He did not raise an army or rally the exiled people to revolt. He made a quiet, private decision about his food. He kept a daily discipline of prayer 3 times a day, going to his upstairs room, opening his windows toward Jerusalem, and kneeling even when Darius passed a law making that specific prayer punishable by death in the lion's den. He did not hide his prayer. He did not close the window. But he also didn't shout it into the streets. He did not negotiate with himself about whether this particular moment was the right moment to compromise just a little bit to survive. He simply continued, because the man who has decided on the quiet things has already decided on the loud things. This is the mechanism that the children's story misses entirely. The furnace was not the hardest moment for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The furnace was the easy moment. The easy moment is the one that is intensely public, where the stakes are glaringly obvious, where the lines are drawn and everyone can see what is being asked of you. You either bow or you burn. It's binary. The hard moments are the ones no one else sees. The ones where you are completely alone in a room with a plate of food that costs you absolutely nothing to accept. Where no one would notice if you ate it. Where the practical, logical argument for compromise is completely, 100% reasonable. You need your strength. God knows your heart. It's just food. Where you could just let it go. Those are the microscopic moments that make or break a human soul. And the text understands this deeply. Because it shows us the furnace, yes. But it also explicitly shows us the 10 days of vegetables. The 10 days are the invisible foundation. The furnace is just the visible proof. There is something else. Something about Daniel's longevity. Daniel's life spans multiple, opposing empires. He is taken captive under Nebuchadnezzar the Babylonian. He survives the chaotic transition to Belshazzar. He survives the bloody fall of Babylon and the violent transition to Darius the Mede. He is still active, still highly ranked, under Cyrus the Persian. He outlasts every single system that tried to contain him. Not because he was lucky. Not because he was a slick politician who knew how the political winds were blowing. He survived because he was not invested in any of them. A man who is genuinely free, genuinely unattached to the approval, the wealth, and the resources of whatever system is currently in power is essentially impossible to leverage. There is no handle on his soul. There is nothing to grab. Nebuchadnezzar could not use Daniel's ambition against him, because Daniel was not ambitious in the imperial sense. He didn't care about being great in Babylon. Belshazzar could not use Daniel's fear against him, because Daniel had already made his peace with the worst possible outcome decades ago. They offered him purple robes, gold chains, the third highest seat in the government. He looked at the most powerful man in the world and said, "Keep them. You cannot buy a man who simply does not want what you are selling." And before we get to the part of this story that hits closest to home, I want you to sit with one question for just a moment. Not a rhetorical question. A real one. A difficult one. When was the last time you said no to something, not because you couldn't have it, not because you couldn't afford it, but strictly because of who you had decided to be? Hold that thought. Because what comes next is the piece of this story that every system of power in history has worked the hardest to bury. And yet, and this is the part that gets lost in the hero worship, Daniel was not cold. He was not a stone pillar of righteous anger. He was not simply a machine of perfect, principled rigidity. When he received the vision of the four beasts in chapter 7, the terrifying creatures rising from the churning sea, the final empire with iron teeth that crushed everything in its path, the text says he was deeply troubled. His color changed. He kept the matter in his heart, brooding over it. He was genuinely shaken. He had seen something horrific about the future of human history, and it disturbed him to his core, and he did not pretend otherwise. When he received the vision of the 70 weeks, the countdown to something immense, bloody, and irreversible, he fasted for 3 full weeks. He wore sackcloth. He ate no choice food. No meat or wine touched his lips. He used no lotions. He mourned. A man of extraordinary strength. A man who stared down emperors, mourning in the dark. Genuinely. Not performing religious grief for an audience. Actually sitting alone in the crushing weight of what he had been shown. This is the human texture of the story that always gets edited out. The man who stood completely unmoved before raging kings, who walked out of the lion's den without a scratch, who read the handwriting on the wall without flinching or stuttering, was also a man who wept alone in his room when he understood the staggering scope of what was coming upon the earth. Both things are true. Both things are explicitly in the text. And both things are entirely necessary. Because the alternative, the version where Daniel is simply a perfect, impervious, emotionless vessel of divine will who never feels fear or sorrow, is not a human being. It is a statue. And statues, as this story very pointedly demonstrates with Nebuchadnezzar's 90-foot golden monument, are not what stand the test of time. Statues are eventually ground to dust. Human beings endure. Broken, mourning, uncertain, fiercely faithful human beings who keep doing the quiet things even when no one is watching. That is what actually endures. Consider what the story looks like from the outside. If you are one of Nebuchadnezzar's Babylonian advisors watching this unfold in real time, you see 4 young men from a conquered, devastated country. They have no power, no army, no political connections that still function. Their holy city has been besieged and will soon be burned, their sacred temple looted, their king is in chains with his eyes gouged out. Every single external marker of their world has been violently taken from them. And yet they refuse to eat the meat. It probably seemed absurdly small at the time. It probably seemed like the kind of stubbornness that is cute in children and intensely irritating in adults. Just eat the food. Don't make a scene. You are guests here, complicated guests, prisoners of war, but still, you are alive. Eat the food. And the refusal probably seemed even smaller because nothing dramatic happened immediately. No lightning from heaven struck the king's table. No visible sign of divine favor appeared in the dining hall. Just 4 men who said no to the king's rich meat and wine. and said yes to vegetables and water, and at the end of 10 days were in marginally better physical condition than the rest. A small decision, with a quiet, biological result. And yet that incredibly small decision, that 10-day experiment in bodily discipline, is the seed of absolutely everything else that follows. The dream interpretations, the high promotions in the government, the unmoved stance before the roaring furnace, the reading of the wall, the visions that span centuries into the future. All of it, the entire legacy of Daniel, grows out of a quiet, unobserved no at a dinner table. There is a word the text uses repeatedly for Daniel. In some English translations it is purity. In others it is integrity. But in the original Aramaic and Hebrew, the closest modern equivalent is something like wholeness. He was not divided. He was the exact same person sitting at the king's banquet table as he was alone in his room at 3 in the morning, kneeling, facing a ruined city he had not seen in decades. The same. That is not as simple or as common as it sounds. Most of us, or many people, we have a version of ourselves we project for work, a version for home, a version for the public eye, a version for private moments. We have opinions we share loudly, and opinions we hold back out of fear. We have things we would say in a room full of allies that we would absolutely never say in a room full of strangers. That calibration is not always inherently wrong. It is often a survival mechanism. It is often wise. But Daniel represents something entirely different. A man so fully aligned with a single interior reality, so rooted in a truth higher than the empire, that there is simply no gap between his public and private self. No leverage point. No crack in the wall where the Babylonian Empire can insert a wedge to pry him open. What you see is exactly what he is. All the time. In every room. Before every king. That is the code the Babylonian Empire could never crack. Not because the code was intellectually complicated, but because the man was complete. And here is the final thought before we reach the legacy. The visions Daniel received: the 4 terrifying beasts, the statue of metals, the ram and the goat. The 70 weeks they were sealed. The angel explicitly told him to seal the scroll, because the vision concerned the distant future. It was for many days ahead. Daniel wrote it down. And then he disappeared from the historical record. There is no final triumph recorded. No final grand sermon. No emperor bowing at his feet as he dies a hero's death. Just silence. And a sealed scroll left behind. He decoded a massive message he would never see delivered to its final recipients. He carried world-altering information he would never live to verify with his own eyes. He held on to a timeline that extended centuries beyond his own death, into the era of the Messiah and beyond. And he did it anyway. He wrote it down anyway. Because the point was never to see the outcome. The point was to remain faithful to what he knew was true, even when what he knew was true would not be confirmed in his own lifetime. That is not a small thing. That is perhaps the largest, most difficult thing in this entire story. Babylon fell in a single night. The greatest empire in the known world, ended by water and hubris. Or if you are reading a different kind of history, the history written in the heavens, it was ended by a countdown that had been running silently for decades. A countdown given to a prisoner. Written down. Sealed. Waiting in the dark. The empires of the world always thought they were the ones with the power. They were entirely wrong about that. The Book of Daniel has survived every single attempt to marginalize, destroy, or domesticate it. It survived the violent Greek suppression under Antiochus Epiphanes, who actually desecrated the Jewish temple by sacrificing a pig on the altar and tried to burn all the scrolls. It survived the Roman political instinct to flatten everything spiritually destabilizing. It survived centuries of being confined to academic footnotes and children's picture books. It is still here. And the question it raises, the one it has always raised, from the very first chapter of the vegetables to the very last chapter of the sealed scroll, is not really about Babylon at all. It is about you. In a world constantly designed to rename you, what name do you actually answer to? In a culture that sets endless tables with food you know you should not consume, do you still have the discipline for 10 days of vegetables? When the cultural music plays and absolutely everyone around you is bowing down, what is the thing inside you that stays standing? Or has it already bent so slowly, over so many small, imperceptible moments of compromise, that you no longer even remember when it happened? The code Daniel used was not complicated. It was wholeness. The absolute refusal to be one person in public and another in private. The refusal to let comfort make the decision that principle should make. The refusal to measure the value of your resistance by whether or not the rescue comes. The legacy of this story is not that Daniel survived the lions or the furnace. The legacy is what he produced while he was surviving. Visions. Historical records. A countdown. A map of the end of history that people are still reading and debating 2,500 years later. He was a prisoner who produced things that outlasted every single empire that tried to contain him. Think about that for a moment. What are you producing in the place where you are currently being held? So tell me in the comments honestly. In a world built almost entirely on compromise, is it still possible to remain completely uncorrupted? Or are we already wearing the names Babylon gave us without even realizing it? I want to know what you actually think. Argue both sides. There is no right answer, only the honest one. If you want to go deeper into the hidden, unfiltered history of early scripture, subscribe. Because there is much more still to uncover.